Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tech Innovation Series by System Specs. We'll just allow 2-3 more people join us, and then we'll kick off in 2-3 minutes. Thank you very much. Good morning again. In the meantime, if you have any friend who's indicated interest to join, maybe you could drop a message for them and have them join us, quickly, because once we hit the ground running, we'll go all the way without stop. Thank you very much again for joining. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. We are starting in 2 minutes, but I can see Oluwasegun Adesonya in about 10 places. I know this Tech Innovation Series, but I never thought we could have one person teleport, become 10. So in case you joined from a link from Oluwasegun Adesonya, maybe you should check your name and correct it so that when we will get back to you with the summary of today's conversations, we would not refer to you as Oluwasegun Adesonya, instead of using your name. Thank you very much for coming. As our facilitators, our panelists are all in. So we would start in exactly 1 minute. Like I said, if you have any friend who probably you've talked about this, or you could share, you have the flyer, you have the link, let them join in ASAP, or you can head down right now to any of our channels, and then on YouTube, Remita, you can join this conversation from there directly. You can also tell your friends, go to the email for those of you that registered directly and joined through the registration link provided by the email. Go to the email, copy out the link and send to your friends so they can join either on YouTube or via Zoom. Either ways, you will still get the full gist of today's Tech Innovation Series. You should start. All right, we have to start right now. It's 11:05. We're starting right away. I want to welcome everyone, especially to today's Tech Innovation Series. It is powered by Remita, Human Manager, Fundicus, and Pouchy. These are brands under the System Specs, brand. Now, these are great companies in and of themselves, and we've come together to put heads together, look at the touching stories, especially the reality that we have on ground today, of how, some of the policies of government have affected our lives, both in a good way or in a bad way. So today we'll talk about it, answering one fundamental question, which is the cash crunch or the aftermath of the Naira redesign policy. Have we come out of it fully? If yes or no, how are you preparing for it? How are you adapting to it? And how are you preparing yourself for it, for how to overcome this in the future, especially given that these same old notes that are currently in circulation or do not now, by December 31st, they will be out of circulation. Question is, will your business be ready to accept collect payments? Will your business be ready to support your customers excellently, using other innovative channels, as it were? So if you don't have a notepad, grab one and a pen so you can take as much as you can in terms of notes today. And then it's a promise too that in the next, in the coming days, we are going to send you a recap of all of this, of the conversations we would have here, a recap of them, and then we'll also share the links with which you can, the link to get access to the recording if you'd like to listen to it. Thank you very much and welcome. Let me tell you about Tech Innovation Series and then a little bit about, the mother company that has, this put together. Now, Tech Innovation Series is a webinar series that we'll be having quarterly this year. And our goal for, for this series is to discuss ideas, that affect tech innovation, technology innovation, both in Nigeria and, in our surrounding Africa, looking at the trends that are available and how we can leverage these trends, to make our businesses stronger, make our offerings solid, and then make ourselves as users, adapt in terms of, making sure you are not crushed by any policies of government that may come. Let me tell you a very short story. Now, it's a short story of innovation. It's a short story of innovation, especially of System Specs. Now, we are been around for 3 solid decades, and we are proudly Nigerian. We have been running our businesses, providing excellent solutions across Nigeria and other African countries. Over the years, over the decades, I shouldn't say years, over the decades, actually, we have built innovative solutions. Like, we are known for innovation, excellent systems, innovative solutions, and best-in-class services. And the testament of this is across the industries that we currently play in. We are poised to continuously innovate, solving real problems that are facing businesses in Nigeria, users in Nigeria and Africa, and then by extension, the world, and giving value in every sector that we play in. System Specs, some of you may not know, System Specs have been, have 4 operating entities under the System Specs big umbrella brand. That is Remita, Human Manager, System Specs Technology, and Dealer. The focus of today is not to talk about how, it's not to describe what each of these businesses represent now. The focus of today is actually to tell you how we have been innovatively solving problems for Nigeria and Nigerians, and by extension, Africa. Now, the 4 brands, the 4 companies that are powering this this webinar are Remita, and you can engage Remita, at Remita, www.remita.net, Human Manager at humanmanager.net, System Specs Technology by pouchy.net or fundicus.net. Either way, you get to them, and also you can reach us via Dealer, our website dealer.com, as it is displayed on your screen. So we are going to, let me introduce you to what we are doing today, the agenda, and then I would introduce our panelists, and then we have a few questions we'll ask them, after which we will then open up the room for some questions, but would advise that all questions should be written in the chat session so that we don't have interruptions in terms of noise interruptions, because multiple people want to talk. So if you have any questions for us, for the panelists today, you just drop it at the chat session. Someone will pick it up. Myself, I'll pick it up and then ask the panelists on your behalf. Now, introduction of panelists is next, after which we'll go on to 50-minute panel session, and we'll take the question and answers for 20 minutes, and then we'll do our closing formalities. One thing I promise you, whether you are on Zoom or on YouTube, is we are going to do a recap of this session and send to you, in the coming days. Thank you, and welcome to our webinar today. So I am going to, I would go straight up to our panelists now. I'd encourage our panelists to turn on their videos, and while I introduce the panelists that are here. So the first person I would introduce whose video is already on, is Mr. Deremi Atanda. Now, Mr. Deremi Atanda is a passionate Nigerian husband, father, and business leader with an impressive track record of accomplishments spanning over 30 years. When you call system specs, there are names that go along with system specs, all right? And then, as a product of the Nigerian Federal Government College system, he has a first degree in physical sciences from University of Ibadan, an MBA from Pan Atlantic University, that's Lagos Business School, and a whole lot of other certificates, and experience in terms of that. Also, throughout his career, he has shown tremendous dedication in leading teams to deliver several national transformation projects, and he continues to be part of the several impact-driven economic initiatives. Jeremy is an avid reader, that I know. He's an amateur photographer, actually, that I don't know. He's an art lover, a travel enthusiast, an event organizer, an advocate for young people. He has been a very big influence in my life. He believes in consistently seeking out innovative ways to create value for anything that he puts his hand, including businesses and the entire economy. He's currently the MD and CEO of Remita, a leading African payment technology company with head office in Nigeria. I would like you to say welcome, join me to say welcome to Mr. Deremi Atanda. From here, I will clap because I'm sure you can hear me clap. You're welcome, sir, and we're happy to have you. The next person I would introduce, who is already joined us here, is Demola Igbalajobi. Demola is an accountant and information technology professional with business analysis, change management, program management, and business development experience. Now, for all of these experiences that I just read out, I have benefited from his tutelage since he's directly my MD. The next thing I'll talk about is that prior to joining System Specs, Demola has worked as a tax inspector with the UK government. Also, he had a long spell with IBM UK, managing software implementation, application, developing projects across boards, especially in the ERP session of IBM. He has delivered several projects with the Remita, with System Specs, especially with the federal government, the Treasury Single Account as TSA program, and a whole lot of others that I wouldn't want to even mention. He is an alumnus of Manchester Metropolitan University, England, and George Washington University, in the United States. Please join me as we welcome Mr. Ademola Igbalajobi. Please turn on your video. Let's see. Yes, turn on your video. Okay, his video is on. You can. His video is smiling, and I'm happy that you have joined us today, sir. Thank you. The next two people I would introduce are our panelists. Given that March is the month for the women, that is why I have saved, let me not say the best for the last, but I have saved this introduction for the very last. I would introduce, first of all, Dr. Henrietta Onwegbuzie. Dr. Henrietta has a very massive influence in my life. and we go beyond, having been a major facilitator in the program I did in LBS. He has also been a major influence in my life. She's an associate professor of entrepreneurship at the Lagos Business School and a certified management consultant. She is also an IFC certified management trainer. Dr. Onwegbuzie is passionate about economic development and social economic transformation in Nigeria and by extension, Africa, and has initiated the creation of over 100 profitable, impact-driven businesses through the MBA and executive programs at Lagos Business School, where she leads sessions in entrepreneurship on the MBA and executive programs. She's currently the director of Business Innovation Accelerator and the project director for the Impact Investing Initiative at LBS. She was recently conferred the Executive Award in Entrepreneurship and Impact Investing and appointed a distinguished fellow of the Global African Leadership Council. If I continue to go on and on with our profile, we may spend the next 5-10 minutes reading our profile. But one thing I'll say to you is, in terms of having a great influence in the industry, both in tech, in entrepreneurship, in women empowerment, and impact investing, if you want to call a name in Nigeria, that name should be Dr. Henrietta Onwegbuzie. So I want to thank you especially, Doctor, and I want to welcome you to today's session. I will put my hands together here. I know the rest of the people who have joined, would also do the same. Thank you for joining. The next person I will introduce before we jump right into today's conversation is my friend and someone I met some years ago when she was building one of Nigeria's most talked about banking business, that is Bankly. Now, Tomilola Majekodimo, who I fondly call Tommy, is the founder and CEO of 5554 Technologies, that is popularly known as Bankly. Bankly is a technology-driven financial institution with the core mission of digitizing cash and enabling businesses sector accept payments and grow income safely. If I were not to read her profile, I were to talk about it, directly, I would say Tomilola is very passionate, and she drives a licensed microfinance bank called Bankly and has penetrated, the hinterlands of Nigeria, providing, financial services to both the unserved, underserved, and even those who like technology innovation when it comes to financial services. She is the Katia Woman Initiative Fellow 2021 and the winner of Innovating Justice Challenge in The Hague 2020. She is the winner of the Entrepreneurship Award of the London Business School, Institute of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, amongst others. Recently, I think she was named among the Forbes Coaching Council also, but I know she's a very accomplished entrepreneur. Let's welcome Tomilola, to this session. Now, going forward, we're going straight into the panel session, and it's going to span like 20 minutes, so between now and 12 o'clock. So I would urge, our panelists to get ready for this wonderful session, and because it promises to be very interesting. Now, I would ask some questions from here, but before I ask those questions, I will just give you a little bit, a 3 to 5 minutes background of why we are, here. Late last year in Q4, we heard when the government announced the Naira redesign policy, and how it was going to help us, go a long way to. Somehow it was talked about how it will help cashless policy and all of that. And when it was implemented, it happened at the time where we were going into an election. And bottom line, if you walk on the streets of Nigeria today and ask about this, Naira redesign policy, the only thing people will tell you that it brought about untold agony. Today's session is not to be the judge or the umpire or referee, who will be judging the case of CBN. No. Today is a day, this session is going to be focused on talking about innovative ways to navigate these waters of the Naira redesign, saga, if I were to call it that way. We want to talk about how businesses can adapt quickly, look at alternative channels that we could leverage, and look at the ways some of the accomplished entrepreneurs and those who are supporting businesses in Nigeria. And the four panelists, the four of them that is all they do, supporting businesses, in Nigeria. So we're going to ask them how businesses are responding to these things, this policy, how things have been so far from their experience. They will give us some examples, and then we'll ask and answer some questions that will help us position ourselves as businesses, business leaders, as tech professionals, and all those playing in the several sectors that we have today. The theme of this webinar, this series 1 webinar, is cashless policy, sustaining digital payments beyond the currency redesign. Cashless policy, sustaining digital payments beyond the currency redesign. Just to reiterate, this session is aired live on our YouTube channel. So you could tell people, just tell your friends who probably reaching out to you that have you joined and all that, tell them to just go to the Remitter, the Remitter YouTube channel, and they will join in, and also will take their questions, from the chat session of the YouTube channel. Let me go to my first question, and I'll direct this question to Dr. Henrietta Onwebuzie. The question is, how did businesses, let me make it present continuous. How are businesses in Nigeria handling the cash scarcity dilemma? Now, after Dr. Henrietta will add a little bit of, when she answers this to me, I would also, implore you to, add a little bit of a context as well, since the two of you are engaging directly, with the last mile. So how are businesses in Nigeria handling the cash scarcity dilemma? And then what alternatives have these businesses resorted to currently? And then can these alternatives be classified into digital and non-digital? Let me take that again. How are businesses in Nigeria handling the cash scarcity dilemma? And then are they using alternatives? And what are those alternatives that they've resorted to? And then can these alternatives be classified into digital and non-digital? I'll leave the floor for amiable Dr. Henrietta and Tomilola. So is the question clear, ma? Just unmute your microphone and then let's see. Please unmute. Could you please unmute your microphone, ma?
All right.
Okay,
all
great.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So good morning, everyone. Sarah, it's a pleasure to see you again, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and it is my hope that we have a mutually rewarding time shared. Jeremy, great to see you also, and everyone. So so like every change, and I like the quote that says, "Change is inevitable, growth is a choice." And so we tend to be surprised, but by now we should all know that the unexpected challenge is going to come up every now and then. Brian Tracy says there are always 6 cycles of good times before the bad time comes. Okay, so, and when this happens, you have 2 groups of people. The ones who lament and have a pity party and enjoy themselves lamenting the situation, and the ones who do the needful, the ones who say, okay, what can be done now? And these are the ones who actually grow during a crisis, while the others go down during the crisis, just like happened during COVID. Many businesses went down, but some grew 3 times, others 4 times, others by 5. Okay, it was their best year ever. Now, I always ask this question, what's the difference between these 2 groups of people? Why do some grow and others don't? Okay. The ones who don't grow are the ones who are in business just to make money for themselves. Okay, that is the, the Jews or the Greeks say human beings are categorized into citizens, tribesmen, and idiots. The citizens are those who seek the common good. The tribesmen are those who only seek the good of their own clan, whether religious or ethnic or racial or social class. While the idiot is the one who's all about me, myself, and I. Okay, and so so they can't see beyond, oh, I was collecting money before, now I must collecting money again. Okay, so they have a pity party. This government is useless, CBN is ineffective, blah, 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 blah. And they end it there, and everybody laments until they go down. Finally, they sack all their staff. The other group see business as a tool to serve society, as a solution provider, and that's the entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, what's the problem? Where's the solution? And as they say, there's always a silver lining under every cloud. And those who are solution driven are always looking for the solution in each situation. Okay? And so in this situation where there was no cash, every customer, every business, whether you like it or not, has different categories of customers. The trusted customers, the ones who buy in bulk, then the not so trusted customers are the ones you don't trust at all. Okay. And so given that, yes, so it's true that it was quite a conundrum because there was no cash and tech was also failing. So it was really, really bad. But at least this is where trust comes into place. You know those who buy from you regularly, you have a track record, okay? Are you able to go to them, approach them, proactively approach them to say, let's keep a record of what you're taking, and where technology is able to serve, because we all know that our mobile apps were failing, we use it. Where it isn't able to serve, we keep the record and then we make do as the problems ease, because this definitely cannot be a permanent situation. The ones that are not so trusted, you can tell them to pay a deposit, maybe that's a refundable deposit that will be given to them when they've made good their original debts. Okay, and depending on how vulnerable you are, you can decide that for the ones that are not trusted at all, you can't, or they have to bring their cash, or they have to do their transfers, and you record it, So it didn't have to be a no-go area for your business completely. The second thing was to think, in this situation, how can I provide a solution? Okay. So for those, we already have this POS business, which is actually entrepreneurial, because I was surprised. I think I saw it first where outside Nigeria, and I thought, we don't do this in Nigeria. Only for me to go to the market, and I see that we're doing it here as well. Where did I see this? I don't remember now, but I think it was another African country, And I think it's a nice solution. But in that situation where POS providers were exploiting people, pay 2,000 to get 10,000, okay? Whoever was doing it properly would have made a lot more money. Whoever was unexploitative would have made a lot more money than those who have been exploitative. And not just money. It was an opportunity to create a brand and a relationship with organizations and people that you will benefit from when this is all over. Like I tell people, every problem represents a potentially profitable business opportunity. If we have an entrepreneurial mindset, which is simply, what solution can I bring to this challenge that we're faced with? Okay. So it didn't have to be that you didn't sell at all. It was interesting to see bread sellers with account numbers on their trays, And then on the other hand, in terms of individuals, actually, it was an opportunity to actually be more disciplined in spending. I remember one day I was driving to school and I thought, my bottle of groundnuts is finished. Let me buy a bottle of groundnuts. And then I reached to my bag and I remember that I don't have cash. So I realized that I couldn't do that, spontaneous spending. Okay, I'll go to the salon, pay for my service, and then look up and tell the guy, typically I'll give you a tip. I'm sorry, I don't have cash, and you know what's going on, and it was really the case. So at the end of the day, I think it also helps us to reduce spontaneous spending, not that it was significant, okay, but and precisely, it could also help many companies get good habits. If you don't do your books right and all of that, most of your spending would have had to go through, transfers, which will give you a more disciplined way of accounting for your expenditures. So what I would say is, depending on the industry that you are in, okay, if you had this solution-driven mindset, it definitely was difficult because, as I said before, technology was also failing. Technology was working beautifully in the absence of cash. That may have been an opportunity to get people into this cashless system, okay? But that failed also. But then, and the key thing I would say to survive any crisis is to have that solution-driven mindset. so that you quickly, it facilitates creativity and innovation. Because if I think about what happened during COVID now, my friend who runs a fast food outlet in Lekki here, she made more money than ever before during COVID, because people have to send their cooks back to their families. They won't leave their children and stay in your service. And it so happens that many women in Ikoyi, Lekki, and VI don't know how to cook. So she was supplying breakfast, lunch, and dinner to many families in the area. And she housed all her staff, and then they were going out. Many hotels turned their laundry sections into, dry cleaning services for the public, because they realized that people would need this service. And rather than, remain idle there, they could do, and they were also sending food to people. I mean, people were also ordering food from them, and they were sending food to people. So it's really about looking at your industry and asking yourself, given this challenge, what can I do? If somebody has been buying food, if you're a food seller by the roadside, and somebody has been buying food from you, or a company has been buying food from you, you can tell them, okay, write your names here, do the transfer. If it doesn't go, okay, I'll put your telephone numbers. I will reconcile later and call you back. You don't have to stop selling. The question now is, how does she get her raw materials? She should have customers by now for her inputs, who should also do the same for her. So it's really about being solution driven. I think I'll stop here for now to allow others speak.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've gathered about 4 points from all you said. You have mentioned that in terms of alternatives, building a business on trust would have been a very good way to gain customer confidence, such that when people come and buy, you can take down their, if transfers aren't going, you can just take an inventory of what they've bought, and then they can send, later. You've also said that this cashless thing, the aftermath of this policy actually led to reduction in spontaneous spending. In my own case, that really, when you drive past my estate gate, hey, chairman, just this, sorry, there's no cash right now. So it actually helped with this spontaneous spending. And then for businesses, it improved, it gave them a disciplined way of accounting for everything, since most of the transactions now have to come in, through digital channels. Thank you very much for that. Now, tell me, do you have something to add to this? How did you respond, given that you deal with the last mile directly? How did you respond to, to this, or businesses that leverage your services? How did they respond to this policy and the Naira redesign, saga? Okay, please, someone, please unmute Tomi so that she can. Okay, host, please unmute Milola Majekodemu so she can respond. Let me see myself. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you so much. Just to say thank you to System Specs and the Remitter team for this platform. I think Dr. Arienta has given a very good foundation to the conversation in general. But if I'm going to answer the question directly, which you say is that how did businesses respond? And I think I would just kind of take us a little bit backwards to pre this whole situation. Historically, financial institutions have attempted to digitize retail businesses, and for years, I'll say not much success have been recorded for especially the informal sector. And I would say this informal sector is the sector that suffered the most. And if you look at the difference between the formal and the informal sector, as someone who works in the formal sector, even if you are a young high school student who just said, I need to spend 30 days in Remitter just to learn, and Remitter and System Specs decides to pay you a stipend, they will first digitize that payment. They won't put cash in an envelope and hand it over to you. So the formal system, and once your income is digitized through the source of funds, you will oftentimes, as long as you go through the use of funds, if all your usage or where the restaurants, the market you're going to, if those locations accept digital financial payments, you would easily not need cash. And you see that experience with a couple of us who hardly need cash except you're giving those spontaneous spending, except you're buying, or except you're actually buying things outside of supermarket into local market, into the informal sector. Now, more often, if we look at the way agency banking has grown in the last couple of years, agency banking has been as a result of people moving cash away from digital to moving money away from its digital form to cash, because a bunch of the informal sector is very large, and every time we want to buy anything, even in locations like Lagos VI, in those top locations where digitization should be almost 100%, you will go to Oniro Market and you still need to pay in cash. Now, the reason why some of these challenges in digitization can be broken down into 4 across board. Some of these retail informal businesses, there's poor infrastructure. I would say infrastructure hasn't gotten to a certain level. Some of them don't have smartphones. Some of them don't have the internet capacity at the right time is not there. So sometimes cash was easy, they did it, and they were reluctant to accept the digitization that was coming from financial institution. And so I've already talked about low smartphone penetration, internet penetration. We also had, of course, financial inclusion was a challenge, given that these people were accepting cash rather than accepting, if you go to the market, their own source of funds was in cash rather than digital. And so once it's in cash, they will use the funds, because source of funds and use of funds is very important. They end up using those funds in cash as well, and there was no incentive for them to digitize it. And just generally, that led to a general addiction to cash, because we would need to say there was just that appetite for cash and cash only, and that we will see that result of that appetite, that hungry appetite during the cashless policy. Now, the cashless policy created, like Dr. Renta said, created both a challenge and an opportunity. Opportunity for DFIs to step into the play and attempt that digitization again, but this time with less resistance from the players, because the regulators have insisted on this policy. However, I don't think that for the DFIs, I don't think that there was enough time to respond, and there was enough time for systems and infrastructure to be ready for the scale. And sometimes people misunderstand that technology systems has capacity, has limits, and sometimes it gives you no warning. Just sometimes how you start your car and you wake up, everything was perfect yesterday. You start your car sometimes and it just looks as if it's not starting. So people outside of technology often misunderstand that sometimes technology works like that. And yes, we saw it with some of the biggest banks. It wasn't for lack of cash or lack of willingness to make sure that the system was right. It was just the system sometimes balked under the intense pressure at that time, and some of them were not ready for it hit its limit, and they were responding very quickly. But we also have to say that for retail businesses, we saw 3 sets. I would say maybe 3 is a short is just what I experienced. We had those who took on this cashless, like Dr. Rieta said, and they picked on it very quickly. Now it's provided a lot of advantages to their businesses. I know people who worked in filling stations who actually was so happy to accept digital financial services, or who owned these kind of businesses. Why? Because it protected them from fraud and the losses they've incurred in the past due to cash, because of the lack of traceability and the loopholes that cash causes when people pay them in cash. So business owners were able to protect and build sustainable businesses because of this digitization. You had a second set who kind of also quickly jumped in to reactivate their account, get other tools. And you also have digital financial services businesses adding more services into. Many times people you go to a merchant location and you're paying with POS. Now, transfer has always been a challenge because you are waiting for people to confirm the transfer, which cards has always not had that issue because you can instantly get a success note and a receipt. But people started, you have a lot of this, a lot of licensed CBN licensed players who were adding instant confirmation on the POS on for transfers so that you don't have to wait long distances to. But they also find out that some businesses were a little reluctant to change. Like you said, change is the most constant thing. Sometimes you find that people are stuck in their ways. Now you had the second set of people who just were not willing to change. They would say they would not sell, they would want to cry and they want to spend time. So when you offer to pay them in transfers, they said no. They absolutely rejected to get paid in transfers. And of course, they had challenges with selling where that is. I also heard of the thought set who actually, when you build relationship, when they've had relationship with these retailers and they say, you know what, people were buying on credit. In fact, so there's the unintended consequence of a maybe credit system, local communal credit system growing as a result of this. I think that we responded Nigerians we are very responsive to change. We're very flexible and we are very industrious. So we saw that even with all of the challenges, we saw people responding very quickly. But I do wish, and I think a lot more could have been done. And I think that the nation is actually ready if it's been given a lot more time to prepare for that cashless, for the change. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much, Tumi. You have said that this should have presented an opportunity for DFIs. So for those who are asking what DFI means, digital financial institutions, correct? DFI is correct? Excellent. Now, for DFIs to step in and help, they would have stepped into the gap and just quickly close it. And then it happened as if there was not enough time for both the banks and DFIs to even respond, So, and then you also mentioned that some businesses benefited from this as well, like fuel stations, where cash is reduced the leakage of cash, which is, a good thing. Now, just one question. We have spent about 20 minutes answering it. It tells you how interesting, this particular policy is. So, but I want us to quickly move on to the next question. And, let me direct this question to Deremi and Demola. But Deremi, you go first, and then Demola, anything he leaves out, you just add that. He says, what opportunities do you believe exist for DFIs, fintechs, and SMEs in a cashless economy? All right. So what opportunities? So probably you should take it this way. First of all, are business owners happy with this policy? We've gotten some of that answer from the first two panelists. But the next two, I want you to answer that question in the light of, okay, what then are the opportunities that exist for the fintechs and SMEs in a cashless economy? Now, before we do that, let me just give out a little announcement. Please, we are live on YouTube. This is being streamed live on YouTube. So you can tell your friends, you can send the link to them. The link is already in the chat session. And then in case you want to ask questions directly to us, even after now, you can send to webinar@systemspecs.com.ng. We will put that in the chat session as well so that you can pick it up, as well as YouTube. And then somebody said, I did not introduce myself. My name is Terry Banks Ozako, and I work with System Specs. I'm driving, the digital economy businesses of System Specs. So let's move ahead to answer the question now. Jeremy, over to you. Are business owners happy with this policy? And then what opportunities do you believe exist in this for fintechs, for DFIs, and for SMEs in a cashless economy?
Thank you very much, Terry, and to Tomi and to Eti and Demola for being on the call to have this conversation. And even though Terry is asking me the opportunities for businesses, fintechs, I would rather say it's a national opportunity. And that's why at conversations like this, it's always very necessary to understand where are you coming from where do you want to go, and what's in between you about where you want to go and where you currently are. And that will easily take us into the realm of what exactly, is there a national payment system vision? Is there a national payment system vision? The truth is, yes, there is. Is there a national financial system? Yes, there is. In Nigeria, there's a National Payment System Vision 2020, and there's a National Payment System Vision 2025. So we can't speak in silos. There must be a total picture so that we can fit these questions within a framework. If we're saying our business is happy, we should ask ourselves, how exactly did we position businesses to behave in 2023? Are they there? If they're not there, why are they not there? And what are the consequences? And I know that you're headlining this event talking about the future of cashless in Nigeria. And many times we define cashless, albeit wrongly, as the absence of cash. That's actually not what it is. So that misconception itself, it can be very damaging when there's no framework in which we communicate. And we've got to conflate issues here, yeah? So at some point, we were talking about cashless, then currency redesign came in. They are not one and the same. Cashless had been around since 2012, the national policy had been in there. At some point in the life of the country, it decided to go into a currency redesign. So two variables, one could lead to the other, but there was a third variable, and that's politics, the way and life of people. So conflict these variables, and then you have a crisis in your hands. And that's why I said the opportunities for us as a country, and like Eti said at the beginning, when things happen to you, you either look back to see what went wrong, you could rectify, or look and start crying as if you are helpless. So before going into the opportunities, I'd rather look at the framework, the national framework for payments and how we found ourselves here. At the end of the day, it's about exchange and value. You need to ask yourself, why do we still need so much cash? Why do we still need so much cash? So I'm going to put a lot of posers out there for people to be able to respond to. They're supposed to be interactive and engaging. Number two, if we think we need less cash and there are going to be benefits, how come people are not aware? There are the two C's of conviction and coercion. If people are aware, you won't have to beg them. And it's just a typical example of digital penetration, talking about mobile phones. Nobody needs to beg anybody to stop writing letters and to go to emails. So there's enlightened self-interest. Number three, if there are benefits, then that means there must be rails, there must be access. So you cannot want to do cashless, people are interested, and there's no capacity to make it happen. And so in summary, I'll say we just add a national UAT for cashless. We just had a national UAT. So you need to ask, who was the project manager? Where was the National Operating Center? Where was the Crisis Management Center? And these are the opportunities that lie ahead of us. So if you want to ask me, were businesses happy? I'll probably say not exactly. Don't forget, businesses are made up of human beings. So things happen. There was a scenario where people's ordinary lives were seemingly disrupted without a preparation to respond. If we're taking 2 trillion out in cash and we're providing 800 billion or so in cash, something must account for that gap. Did we put in place digital channels to account for that? Did we prepare for the displacement that was going to inform the payers and the people to accept? In the midst of this, responding to the conflicted three variables of payments, of currency redesign, of the political environment, the preparations we had in place themselves lent themselves to being stress tested. So we had infrastructure everybody believed were okay. So there's a national emergency, you have induced adoption of cashless, but did we have infrastructure to respond, even when people genuinely wanted to transfer? And like you said at the beginning, it is not about finger pointing, it's about leveraging these experiences. I so much believe in this country. I so much believe in the opportunities. I believe that when things like this happen, it is for us to look forward. So while businesses might not have been happy, like Eti said, and Tomi also said, so many opportunities sprung up. And as we look at this, there's now opportunity for credit. for businesses. Are businesses going to be better structured, leveraging technology to respond to credit? How can we adopt NIN as a single reference for credit? If you have your NIN, you want to buy anywhere, they put your NIN in there. Who's going to respond to that? We have people on the street that suddenly they began to take transfers. That's led to the emergence of wallets, and you can see all over the place. If bank accounts are not easily opened at agents' locations and wallets have become pervasive, that should give us an idea what can happen. What can we then begin to do with mobile money? Because if you've already stimulated the environment and there are things to be done, the next thing I'll say as by matter of businesses about the being happy, it could be either way. Some persons saw growth. And by the time, many times we point at government, you ask yourself, who were those who were charging for their services? That wasn't government. So if you said, were businesses happy? Yes, some businesses were happy. There was no legislation against their happiness because they could charge what they wanted. It was not supposed to be a regulated market to offer services. They're Nigerians. Some people paid. All of a sudden, you saw that people began to appreciate digital services. Where people have complained before, oh, it's not my bank ATM. I have to pay 35 naira. People were willing to pay. Under whatever circumstances, they now appreciated better what digital was and what they were taking for granted. So quite a number of opportunities have lent themselves. Even for those who were in payment business before now, new doors of innovation. What can we do differently? And we're beginning to see that acceptance. A major opportunity, I think everyone probably did not, in the midst of the confusion, was the e-Naira. It was an infrastructure that had been built, more like a national wallet system that everybody, then the question was, how were people supposed to get onboarded on this? What kind of sensitizations had been in place? Was there trust in government at that point in time? And like I said, while we look at all of these factors, is to look at now the UAT. We can ask ourselves, what is the result of the UAT? We also all know what a UAT is, user acceptance test. Who were the users? Who prepared the system? Now we have a unique opportunity together, and that's where I'm going to round off at this session. Collaboration, all of the stakeholders, looking at the different dimensions, taking responsibility, and positioning ourselves to take advantage of the diverse range of opportunities that the currency redesign has provided to stimulate digital payments going forward for businesses and individuals and the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Like, I've been taking notes for, and let me just, so here's what I would do. So, Mr. Demola, I would ask you another question because I think this was thoroughly, captured. So I would ask you another question so that we can move faster too, because I'm also making sure that I keep to my promise in terms of time. So where you have said this exercise somehow now presented itself as a national UAT, which is very key. Like, if the banks thought they were solid, especially the way they declare profits, and some of us will just rush to go buy shares and all of that. So the question now is, are you really solid? Are you really solid? Because it was a total mess for close to 5 days. I transferred money from one of my accounts to another of my accounts that had a debit card. And for 5 days, the money didn't drop. So right now, it was a national UAT. Now everybody has seen that all of the fancy figures that get presented in the boardrooms, most of them are just, hot air. And then we also saw the opportunity for the wallet schemes, that sprung up. A lot of people now deferred to wallet schemes when the national banking system wasn't really processing transactions fast. You also mentioned that the crisis was caused by three variables: the cashless policy that had been there since 2012, the Naira redesign, and the fact that it now happened at a time where people were going into elections. So that, all those three variables now caused all of the unrest that we saw. So thank you very much. So, and you also said collaboration and infrastructure rejuvenation should be the focus of most of the players in the ecosystem. You mentioned e-Naira, but we'll talk about e-Naira in the future. Now, we have questions already rolling in from YouTube. And most of the questions are coming in from YouTube, just to give you some sense of are some of the questions we will already ask. So don't worry. We would, by the time we are done asking some of these questions, we would have answered those questions. All right. Now, to Demola, let me ask you. All right. Looking at so now that the payment channels, the dominant payment channels, which are usually transfers, digital payment channels, transfers, and then the total absence of cash. Now that these have happened, that bank transfers and USSD are not going, do you see the growing opportunity for other digital payment methods, including QR codes, wallets, e-naira and the rest of it? Do you see the opportunity, although Jeremy mentioned some of it, but what are the opportunities you see in that space? And then I would even advise that you answer the question this way, if you let me, system specs in itself, are there ways you are even helping out, that you're helping businesses to, consider other alternative channels? So probably that way you can then put perspective to, the answer you will give. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Good morning, Terry. Good morning, Dr. Henrietta. Good morning, Tomilola and Jeremy. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me just start my own view by saying that no nation is cashless. I've always believed that instead of saying cashless, I would say less cash. And because nobody has been able to go fully cashless. So when we say cashless, it's more around using less of cash. Unfortunately, what we've done over the years seems to be, which is where everybody has been saying that if you're a POS agent in the last few months, you are the person to marry. Even with our agency banking, we moved digital. I don't know if I already mentioned it, to cash. So we created big businesses that were taking cash out of digital and putting cash back into the society. So even though we were meant to be doing cashless, we were actually doing more of cash in many ways. Another thing that I actually want to say is, as we say this and where we are in Nigeria today, Nigeria is actually a leader in payment technology. So we should not miss that. I mean, instant transfers, getting your alert, all of that, we were actually leading in technology. EMV cards was used a lot in Nigeria, even before in many places in the US. So where it wasn't that we never thought about moving digital, or it's a new thing to us. So sometimes we just need to recognize what we've done well, or what we try to do well. So going on from that, in terms of channels, of course, you have many channels. All these channels have been there. Don't mention e-naira, it's been there for at least a year. QR codes have been there for a while. But the question is this: how do people use it? How do they access it? What is the value in using it? What is the reason for using it? So take QR codes. It's been around. You must have it on your bank app. That means that if you don't have a phone that has a bank app, you cannot use QR code very well. So we need to have in place solutions that are accessible by people to make it work. If you don't, it's only a technology advance that is there for technologists. Now, let me take e-naira, for example. Now, it's something that I know last year there was an event with the central bank governor there, where the companies that were leading on it, people like Remita, were recognized. But the next thing is, how do we make it forward? How do we take it forward? That is an infrastructure that is there nationally to be used. So, and I'm happy that I'm seeing Remita pushing now to actually make that infrastructure work, because you cannot just create an infrastructure and leave it there. People need to understand how to use it, how to access it, what is the value for them. They need to know what they can use it for. They need to know what you can use it for, because if before now, you had the case where to use e-naira, you had to have a bank account. So already people who are meant to be at the small business that's been mentioned by Tommy and Co, how do they access it? So channels have to be put in place in the context of what people that will use it and how they will access it. Now, something that I've seen in the last few months, which will lead me to think the opportunities, maybe the channels also, you need to think of who are the businesses that will use them people. Now, Let me give you an example of what I noticed in the last 2-3 months. So there are a group of people that are workers, laborers, builders. Some building sites totally closed down because one, the workers could not come to work because of lack of cash and they wanted to be paid daily. In addition, half of those workers, or a lot of them, were actually non-Nigerians. They are from Togo. Everybody says, oh, if you want to do, tiling, use Togolese, all of that. They don't have bank accounts, but they were actually a big part of our economy. So whatever you want to put in place, you need to look at those people. So you're not talking of, people I don't want to call it low level. They're just, maybe the amount they move is low. So the channels you're going to put in place needs to be such that they can access it. It's easy and it creates value. What is the benefit in it? Why should I put my money in there? Security is not the issue now. And it was interesting to see, let me call it, a lot of the known financial institutions coming up in the last 2 or 3 months. What did they do right? What did they do well? The same channel that's been there before the crisis, all of a sudden they came up because they could transfer or things were looked to be better. So, that's one way I look at it. Now, in system specs, I've mentioned the in-era. Remitters always have like about probably the biggest number of channels on payment gateways, about 9-10 channels. I was discussing something with Jeremy a few days ago, and one of the channels that has always been there, but wasn't moving before, whatever, is now number 4 on the list of things. So people are now picking up things that had been there, so they're adopting it because it is suiting what they need to do. So you are seeing adoption of different channels. The in-era one is another channel. Then on wallet, we are not a financial institution in system such technology. Well, we work with banks and all that to provide that. What do you see in that? There are ecosystems. Nobody wakes up today to say, I want to pay. You want to pay for something, or you want to do something. You want to buy airtime, you want to pay school fees, you want to do that. You want to pay your tithe in churches. Now, what I see again is, where will these things apply? There are sub-ecosystems that happen every day. Schools, churches, communities, markets. How do you build things that digital that will cater for their needs? Dr. Henrietta mentioned trust. Things that create trust and transactions in that ecosystem before it goes to the wider community. A lot of transactions happen in a market within buyers, people who are buying wholesale and selling, retail in the same market. Can you create an ecosystem where the supplier in that market facilitate the sales to the lower level retailers in that market? So if you can create things that can sustain ecosystems as well as transfers and all of that, then you're going to get a bit of traction. So for me, it's about acceptance. It's about getting things that will work for people and making them know what is the value in it for them. What will they benefit from it? We talk of different things, making it sticky, making it something that I use every day. So those are the things that I see on these channels. And I think system specs about innovation. For us, we look to solve problems, not just to, my GMD will ask you, are you creating a solution and looking for a problem for it? Or you are solving a real problem? So for us, we're looking to solve real problems. And I believe that we have some of the issues taken care of, and we're open to partnership, like Jeremy said, on different things that we have an infrastructure that people can build on, and different fintech companies, microfinance banks, that we can support their businesses as well. So for me, it's about collaboration, again, like Jeremy said, but the tools are there, technology is there, is to build solutions that will work for people in their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so if you listen carefully, he has mentioned a couple of ways that we can actually, some other channels that we can adopt, talking about, wallets, looking at in-era and the likes of it. But there's a question from YouTube that I want us to just take, because that question tallies with one of the ones that we already had collated, earlier. Now it says, how can electronic payments be adopted? So this is coming from, be adopted by low-income population and market men and women. So I'm going to let me ask Dr. Henrietta and Tomilola, just throw a little bit of light quickly on this question. How can, electronic payments be adopted by low-income population and market men and women? Okay, so who wants to go first? Doctor, you need to unmute.
Right, the host needs to unmute the speakers. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, but I think it's a good question for the remitter people, for both Ademola and Deremi, because that's one of the things that I always tell students on the MBA program when I say start a business, and everybody's thinking about, businesses that can be run using apps. They're always creating apps, and I'm saying you're thinking only about yourselves. How many people in the marketplace have smartphones and can access apps or use them? Okay, so it's really to go to the marketplace and sort of co-create with them. Okay, of course you have to educate them. I mean, many of them quickly now know how to use the mobile app now because of this cashless situation. So they've been compelled to, and that's why I think it was a great point that Tomilola made when she said that the DFIs could have actually used this opportunity to, sort of educate people in digital banking. The other thing is that they would have also been frustrated because the system was overwhelmed with the level of volume of transactions. Okay, so I would say that, and I must tell you that our indigenous principles are actually ahead of modern day principles, in the sense that many of the things our forefathers did, like Isusu, crowdfunding for, even apprenticeship, where because the other day I was speaking in South Africa and somebody said to me, the beauty of this apprenticeship thing is that you're not just employing people to teach them how to work for you, you're employing them to teach them how to be business leaders. Okay, so what I think will happen if people like System Specs, Jeremy and Ademola go into the market is that by the time you're trying to co-create with them, you will come up with a far superior solution than you would have done speaking with other techies. Okay, how are they managing now? And I'm sure you'd be surprised if you go into the market, because I did my field work with indigenous people because I was focused on indigenous entrepreneurship, and I was able to bring things I learned from them to a class I've taught even outside Nigeria. So those people, I'm sure, have already devised a solution that we don't know, that can just easily be taken and put into a technology platform in a way that makes it easy to use, user-friendly. Okay. Yeah, so I would just say that it would be good to talk to them, hear from them, rather than think that we who are schooled know it all, because they have ideas that we can build on, and we can, like that, come up with a solution that is easy for them to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you. Tommy, you want to add something?
I'm not sure. Can you repeat the question? I was just listening to her. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So he's saying, let me see. He said, okay, hold on. 1 second. Okay, how can electronic payments be adopted by low-income population and market men and women? Did you get the question now? Okay.
Yeah, I think Dr. Arieta has answered, and especially what Mr. Ibalajobi said. And there's been many options, right? USSD has taken off for a long time. I think we're also seeing a good adoption of smartphone technology, smart feature phones. And so you start to see that, because we know that the user experience when you are able to accept these things is there. But most importantly, I think is what I'm appreciating, I'm seeing in the market is the diversity that payment devices are then given. So you don't even have to have a good smartphone, but if you have a good payment terminal that is accepting omni-channel payment, both cards, is collecting bank transfer, like I mentioned earlier, without you waiting hours to wait for someone to confirm it. It's collecting, it's able to just accept even some form of other QR, as you say. So when you produce and we are able to give those devices in an affordable and sustainable way to this market. Again, we need to always remember that some of these devices leverage the telco infrastructure. So when you get to, so we still, the DFIs are still limited to an extent to say, if you put these devices in certain places and the SIM or the data is not working, but this adoption is what we are seeing significantly. And I think if we just continue, time is always in favor of change sometimes, because as time goes on, people start to adopt things, and you would even forget that they've always been on a certain side, that there was a time where cash was everything, cash was 80%. And I think I also like what Mr. Demola said around the fact that no country is cashless. But it's just important to say that traceability, cost of printing cash, right? Shadow economy, all of these things mean that we want to get digitization we want to move it forward, much more forward. And people forget that so much working capital given to merchants, credit system, all of these things come about, those services that move us away from just talking about opening accounts to true financial inclusion can only come about through digitization and that visibility and data that only by paying by cashless can be given. So I think that we're seeing adoption. We just have to be patient, and all players, I think the CBN already knows that sometimes you have to just take the bull by the horn and just do what you need to do. It would have been nice if politics had not had been a factor at that time. But I think without that, this would not even have been a conversation. And I think we'll see the progress. Thankfully that we have till December now, we'll see that adoption and progress gradually to all what we want to start to show. Thank you very much, Tomi. Now that you mentioned that you mentioned December, I'm going to merge three questions together, right? And Jeremy, I want you to answer this question because two of them from the audience. The first one says, what is Remita doing to help the e-Naira adoption in Nigeria? And the person put the question for the MD of Remita. All right. Now, hold that thought. And the next question is, because they are all related. The next question, it says, does Remita support offline payment acquiring? Because this, so another person is now asking more like one of the possible solutions could be offline acquiring. Remember, so they're related. Then the last question, the last question is, it says, now that the Supreme Court has ruled and the CBN has announced that the old currency will remain legal tender till December 31st, 2023, do you think the intent to make Nigeria a cashless economy is lost? If no, how should businesses prepare ahead? Sir, I know it's a lot of questions that are combined into one, but let's see how we can, let's see how we just piece it together. Did you get all the questions, or maybe I should just recap quickly?
Not to worry, I tried. I think I picked a few of them. I know we don't have all the time.
Yes.
Thanks. You gave other people single barrels. You didn't stop at double barrel for me. You gave me quadruple barrel. But that's fine. And I just want to reiterate that we should not mix cashless or less cash with currency redesign. Two different things. That they coincided doesn't make them one and the same. Currency design on its own could be a lever for us to accelerate the cashless journey. And that's the dimension I want us to speak to, that it could be a stimulus. If we've been trying to become a much more digital environment since 2012, and this is the 11th year anniversary, the question to ask ourselves, what are the milestones we're celebrating? If you were to look at the National Payment System vision I talked about, if you had done a report as at 2020, how much had we moved going to 2025? And if currency redesign was going to be a stimulant, then we should have been prepared. What should have been in place for the currency redesign to have helped us to stimulate cashless adoption? And on this note, I would like to challenge the partners on this program, FinTech Nigeria, ProShare, even CBN. Let's get the data. What's the success story of this seeming disruption? Everybody else seems to be complaining, but the honest truth is transaction volumes grew. Who's going to tell that story? It's not all gloom. Transactions volume grew. it outran current infrastructure. Now infrastructure needs to be upgraded. Without infrastructure being upgraded, cashless is going to continue to be a mirage. And on that note, we want to say what other things that we put in place talking about adoption for people at the bottom of the pyramid digital. And I alluded to that earlier. Nobody had to preach telephones. And so it is just so simple. Provide infrastructure to the last mile. Ensure there's awareness. And that's why we talk about the 4A paradigm for this. The first one is awareness. People must know what there is. The second is adoption. The third is acceptance. And the fourth is acculturation, making it a way of life where you keep reinventing the first 3 A's. So we need to ask ourselves, who must take responsibility for this? And that's why I say it's across board. And I think the central bank still has a very major role to play, interfacing more actively with industry. People must, what was the quantum of awareness? How did people ever imagine currency redesign was not punitive? There were so many narratives around it, and it got out of hand. Unfortunately, it was within the political space where the narratives were taken out of hand. So we need to come back, and I'm tying that to the December 31. Now politics is gone, so one variable is dropped. Hopefully, very hopefully, we can then go back to say, what are the opportunities that the currency redesign has for cashless adoption? Who are the players who need to be involved in making this happen? Who's going to tell the story? Who's going to own the narrative? And specifically about e-Naira, which we very much believe in, huge potentials. Africa's first central bank digital currency. We are excited to have been the ones at the forefront of mainstreaming this, the typical everyday, day-to-day use cases for digital currency, seeing adoption at a very fast rate. People didn't need to query what e-Naira was in the face of this crisis. They just went for it. And because it was sitting on alternative infrastructure, things worked. And they saw it. Somebody must tell that success story. Somebody must tell it. And so therefore, it means it can go down. I'm talking about digital. Imagine if the strategy around it was make phones available to everyone. Tommy said earlier, it doesn't have to be smartphones. It could be feature phones. Imagine we thought about cashless from that point of view. And a bit of petrol subsidy is made to give phones to everybody. Just think about it. On a liter of petrol today, you know what the subsidy is on just 1 liter. So it means an average Nigerian can be given a free phone on account of a number of days subsidy. And you're using that to drive a national policy of digital payments. And many things can happen, but there must be ownership, there must be clarity for us to see the kind of results we want to see. But we are passionate about this, and these are some of the conversations we'll continue to be very actively involved with the different stakeholders in the ecosystem. And I know before this December 31, the market should be prepared to see so many things from us, so many things from the other players. And I think at the end of the day, like I said, there'll be more success stories that will make us forget the pains. Like Tommy said, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Interesting perspective, sir. Interesting perspective. Okay, so a lot of questions are coming. So we're just going to delve straight, and we've started answering them anyway. So let me just take this. Demola, I think you should answer this. This person is asking that when you talk about infrastructure that needs to be improved, let me see, where's the question? Please, when talking about infrastructure, what are the different infrastructure that need to be put in place? Can you mention some of them? And then somebody was asking, whose infrastructure? Is it the bank? Is it NIBS? Is it DFIs or even payment gateways? So that, because the failure that happened during this period, it can be traced to several infrastructure points, actually. So which infrastructure are we talking about upgrading here? So Demola, please unmute and just throw some light into this, and then we take 2-3 more questions, and then we start wrapping up.
Okay, thank you very much, Terry. Now, so let me put it in 2 categories. Let me call it open infrastructure, general infrastructure, which I'm talking about what is not specific to payment. So you're talking of smartphones, our phone network, our telco network that Tommy referred to. So those ones are not, they were not built for payment systems only. They just happen to be rails on which payment works. So, of course, we have GSM, we have a USSD, which is a telco product. You know, some of us may be aware of the fight, let me put it in quote, 2 years ago between telcos and banks, which, you know, payment or not, which has kind of been resolved up to a point. But within the payment infrastructure itself, which rides on this other one, you need to look at the main parties or the main steps. If you transfer money from your bank to another bank, it's riding on infrastructure from your bank, the app you're using, the internet you're using at that particular time. It gets to the, you know, the central switch or the switch that's moving it. What happens there? When it gets to your bank, how do they update your bank to make the money come to you? Like you said, you transferred money, you were debited 5 days before. It didn't arrive till 5 days. So what's something has broken in between that? So those are the infrastructure parts that affect a payment to happen. So without trying to blame anybody, you know, it's you have the switches have a lot to answer for. And I say the switches because we have more than one, you know, that do a lot of their jobs. So the switches need to have their key to the infrastructure. That's where monies are recorded as being debited or credited to you, and the banks are doing the last mile. So they sit between you transferring your money from your bank and the other bank getting money. So the switches are one of them. You look at our POS terminals. The POS terminals are all shiny. Most of them are now touch screen. So they're new terminals. But you see the agent carrying the terminal, looking for, I think they are looking for, waiting on God or something, looking for internet, looking for something. Now, so that's an infrastructure failure there, which is connectivity. Some of these terminals are meant to have two SIMs. Maybe they don't have it now. So that's a failure of that infrastructure. We also know that when you get debited, you don't get the credit, or the person says, I haven't got the money. So something has failed in that communication. So the payment infrastructure lie between, let me put it straight, the banks, the switches, the telcos are just part players in it. If it's better, then that's fine. So the failures we've actually had on infrastructure in this time has really been between the financial institutions and the switches to make things work, riding on the national telecom system. So that is where, even for them, opportunities to get better. I'm sure a lot of rethinking is going on in the last 1 month, going to next in 1 or 2 months. So that will get better, definitely. To put things in place, there's always been talk about, what switches do you use? Currently now we use, again, it's not about whether it's right or wrong, but the reality is that we use one switch for all POS transactions. In professional forums, it's been asked, is that optimal? Can we do something about that to relieve that particular strain, which up until now, we used to have issues maybe at Christmas. Now it's been a daily thing. So those are things that we need to look at. What infrastructure are we actually using to move money? Do we need to have them replicated, duplicated, to have resiliency and redundancy in those ones? So that's a key one. The POS infrastructure is a key thing to look at, which also links to the payment infrastructure as well, which are key to maybe some issues that we need to look at. Thank you. I don't know if I addressed all the questions. Was that the only one for me?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
So our time is far gone, and so I will just take 1 or 2 more questions from the audience. I want to thank the audience so much for the questions coming in. We are very happy to have you. Just to announce, please, on the chat session, you would see, in case you have other questions or you think your question wasn't addressed properly, you could just write to us via webinar@systemspecs.com.ng. It's currently posted on the chat session. Just talk about it, write to us, and then we'll have our panelists, respond to these questions. And when we are writing back to you in the course of the week, we would make sure we have all the questions that are unanswered, answered. Thank you very much for taking out your time to attend to this webinar. let me just take one more question. And this question seems to be, this question seems to be a big one. It says, how can a national or centralized database system assist in solving digital payment crisis in Nigeria? But before we do that, please, I'd like my panelists to pose for a photo, for a picture, actually. Just turn on your camera and adjust yourself. Yes. Please unmute your microphone so that it will all come to the home page of this session. Just unmute so that, unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, once you unmute, it comes to the, Jeremy, please, could you unmute? Good. So let's post for, let me see whether me, myself.
Adjust yourself.
Okay. Marketing team, please. This is your order I'm serving. All right. I think by now you should have been done. All right. Thank you very much for the picture. So let's take that last question and then we can round up. Anyone can actually answer this. It says, how can a national or centralized database system assist in solving digital payment crisis in Nigeria?
Okay, maybe I can just take a stab and then both Ademola and Jeremy, and I'm sure Tonilola can build on the more techy part. But I was just thinking about my last trip to Kenya in October last year, where I also got involved in using their M-Pesa. And the impressive thing there is that in fact, there's no human being in Kenya who is not on M-Pesa. And it was really easy. And what I liked most about it was that when I was leaving, because of course, just like you don't use Naira here, we don't use Kenyan shillings there, we don't use Kenyan shillings here either. I could still go through M-Pesa to return the extra Kenyan shillings that I had. Okay, so my take on that question is, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We have something similar, a digital system that is working in Kenya, and I think that Kenya has the same proportion, more or less, between formal and informal markets. Okay, so I think we can get a cue from there as to how they made it happen. And it's pretty rudimentary. I'm not sure now I don't remember now whether it was an app, but everybody has an M-Pesa on their phone, whether it's a taxi driver, a market woman, or a roadside seller. Everybody just seems to have it. And if you're a top executive, and everybody is on it and using it. Okay, so that would be a basis for, I would say, look at that system, but I guess our techies here will know better. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wants to take a stab at this?
Okay, there are different phases of technology evolution, and they also align with social evolution. And while Eti has mentioned M-Pesa, it's a different ball game when you look at the regulatory and social environment. So different things happen that can stimulate things. So at some point, that was what happened. It was largely telco driven. Nigeria decided not to go telco driven for different reasons. Nigeria is a much bigger economy. And then you have the way the financial sector has evolved. But there's still so many opportunities. As the society evolves, as technology evolves, then you begin to see the emergence of these technologies. Like it or not, we saw the kind of things that could also happen with crypto. And it became a global phenomenon. And what were people trying to do to respond to their own needs? So in this environment, I think there are quite a number of things that have emerged and are emerging and need to be supported. The wallet system is one of them. The way wallets are going, it is actually like Band 3.0. Ultimately, all the funds are still held within the financial systems, but the presentment from the point of adoption is entirely different from citizens on the street as well as merchants. And what that is doing, it is lowering the number of points payments go through before it is made. It's almost within the same box, which is essentially what the e-Naira is also still about. And then it makes it easier for you to throttle technology scaling in that sense. So it is to speak to more of these things, get people more around them to innovate around them. We should not operate a closed box. Many times we're trying to just keep opportunities to ourselves and maximize them. And that has to a large extent limited us, like Demola hinted at the bank telco thing. We need to begin to together see the bigger picture and sometimes just make sacrifices in national interest. But this next few months are going to be very, very exciting is what I know. The currency redesign has stimulated new conversations. More than ever, the citizens are aware of possibilities, either from the business or the retail point of view. And with the fintech community responding to this and the banks coming into the future, by the time we're taking count at the end of the year, I believe there will be a lot more pleasant stories. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let me just quickly add a couple of things in there. I mean,
okay.
On the national database. So without trying to reinvent the wheel and all that. So while some things have evolved, we may not be able to create a new national database, but we have data in different places now. 10 years ago, BVN was the official payment or banking reference. NINA's coming. But what you still have is, I mean, so I'm speaking now as a fintech, not, as a fintech person. There's data everywhere. Take, for example, myself now. I have some data in Bank A, Bank B. I use a particular wallet. I pay insurance somewhere, all of those things. So everybody has my data, but how do I? But nobody wants to yield on that data to serve me as a person. So I'm the most important person in the room for the banks and everybody else that's using my data. So without having to create a national database is how do you make those things possible to use together? The second thing is, yes, recently we had the open banking guidelines published by Central Bank, which as a fintech, I welcome because it means that there's some regulatory acceptance that data has to be used. So it could be anywhere, as long as it is not held in a closed silo by somebody who says I cannot touch it, even with the instruction of the owner of that data. So the open banking is a way that we as fintechs can do, more things. And that's another opportunity. Now, the third part of it is you have people who have already built touch points to all of those silo databases, and they can be a facilitator for innovation. So take a systems fetch, for example. By virtue of what we've done, you've said over 30 years in technology, over 16, 17 years in payments, and the project we've handled, and the banks partnership that we have across 500 microfinance banks in Nigeria, all the commercial banks and all of that, there are data touch points there, which with the proper controls, which we always adhere to, fintech firms can actually leverage on it instead of trying to start. But we have been through the journey of walking to every bank. I mean, physically moving to every bank to get this done. So you can ride on those technology to build solutions. What the users want are things. The SMEs want what works for them in their daily lives. They don't want to reinvent the wheel. So it's about the partnership and leveraging technology that other people have built. And that is where, again, I believe that is a touch point that we can create and expose all of those data points with the agreement, registry agreement, data protection rules, consent, all of that in place for fintechs to leverage on and build solutions for the betterment of SMEs and individuals, both in rural and urban areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. We have come to the end of today's panel session. I want to thank everyone for attending the maiden edition of the Tech Innovation Series, and a special thanks to our panelists today. Thank you very much, Dr. Henrietta Onwebuzie. Thank you very much, Jeremy Atanda. Thank you very much, Tomilola Majakodumi, and thank you very much, Dimola Igbalajobi. Our special gratitude goes to the four of you, especially for making out time to be part of this. Thank you. We hope to see you again in the future to discuss more, topics that, can help. The way we've answered a lot of questions today stimulated the audience to make sure they prepare ahead, for December 31st, so that this same repeat of this crisis doesn't happen. Thank you for all of the valuable contributions that you brought in. And then to our audience, thank you for staying. Our YouTube audience, thank you for your active participation. The Zoom audience, thank you. We will get back to you. For all of you that registered, we'll definitely get back to you with the summary of all the bullet points, with the summary of all the points that have been made in this seminar, and to help your business, help your company, even as a tech professional, help yourself and the general Nigerian audience to help you, prepare ahead for anything of such that can happen, and then see how all of this. Any last words from our panelists? Maybe just bye, just unmute and tell the audience goodbye. All right.
Thank you so much, Terry. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks,
Thank you,
Eti.
Tommy.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Demola.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dr. Hetty.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Demola. Yeah. And thanks, everyone. And stay blessed. Have a fruitful weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.